My name is Pat Bayliss. I've been a resident of Vernon for nearly 42 years. Back in 1999, I put a plaque on the Hickling Memorial. I think people should remember the 11 young guys who lost their lives in Vernon in 1909. About 6 of them, they didn't know where they came from, next of kin or anything. I often think of those families of those men wondering what happened to them, and I'm sure they went to the graves wondering.
There was a lot of drugs around because a lot of people came over from England. The remittance men didn't have to work, so they drank.
It was a Monday night in August. It was hot. And reading the newspaper, a lot of people seemed to be wandering around at midnight looking for a place to go for a drink. And if most of them were remittance men, now I can understand why.
I think a lot of sort of posh English people came to the Okanagan and wanted to continue being lords and ladies and not having to do the work, manual work. You know, one lady decided to open a reading room just so that the young men would have something to do on a Saturday or Sunday other than being in the bar of the hotel, and they wanted to encourage the young men who had time on their hands to be a bit more cultured, you know.
The hotel was more like a boarding house.
Oh, yeah.
That's what my mother and Auntie Doll said all along. Most of the people that came there, they didn't just spend the night. They moved in and they stayed there until their job was done.
You know, they talked about the hotel being constructed with a brick veneer and sawdust insulation, linoleum floor, and oilcloth on the top floor. I guess maybe that was the cheap floor to live on. Is that consistent with how other hotels were built in the area?
Certainly consistent to how the houses were.
Yeah.
Doug Buckholes. I'm the Protective Services Manager, and I'm the manager of this facility that we're at. It's the Regional District Fire Training Center.
I'm Mark Wakefield. I'm a retired fire chief of the City of Vernon Fire Department. I retired in year 2000 after 37 years and 7 months service.
I'm Dean Wakefield. I'm Mark's son. I'm currently a firefighter with the City of Vernon Fire Department, and I've been there 11 and a half years now.
With a brick veneer building, they probably in a lot of cases the brick being hot on one side and applying water on the other side causes the bricks to change, and in fact it will force the wall to twist or curve and fall. So it's a foregone conclusion that with a fire really raging inside and you using sort of outside fire attack tactics or defensive tactic, if that's what you want to call it, you're going to lose that building, and the walls are going to come down, and if you're not careful they're going to come down on you. So you don't want to be too close to it. So you got a 3-story building, you got a 30 foot high brick wall, so you're going to be back 30 feet, and then you still might get hit by debris, so you're going to be 50 feet back spraying water at it. So it's a hit and miss proposition at best. Pretty tough to hit the window from 50 feet away with very little pressure, if any.
One of the things, the initial when the fire started, if they were trying to rescue, there might have been people throwing windows to try and or rocks to break windows, and people trying to get up. Sure, yeah. And as they made holes in that building and opened up windows, that just allowed more air to get into it. And once the fire got up into the attic area and it burnt through the roof, it was like just a chimney, and it would have just been roaring through there. For sure. And that's why it would get level.
Well, that fire was definitely well advanced and spreading quickly, and when I read the account of it, it was pretty clear to me that some accelerants were used in that building to promote that fire, and the very makeup of the walls on the stairwells with oilcloth and cotton, like we saw out at O'Keefe Ranch yesterday, and those on fire spreading up the stairwell, no door at the top, no door at the bottom, and that thing's going up there like a chimney and spreading fast. You probably couldn't outrun it once it got going. So you can see why so many people were killed, because they had no way of getting out. They just literally were trapped.
It was in August, and imagine our August now, and now you have to run down, and you're going to get there. You'd be exhausted, hot, and then having to work in that environment. It would be horrendous, just absolutely horrendous with the heat.
Well, those alarm boxes were spread down the main street. I don't know how many they had at that time. The main street would have one probably every second block, and those two that were used at the hotel fire were box 7 and box 6. They would be located right on the street corner, marked, and also probably close to the hydrant. The alarm goes into the fire hall, and there was a large brass bell hanging on the wall. It was called a Gamewell system. And as the box went through its cycle, they were a clockwork mechanism run on DC power. So that bell would ring 6 times, and then it would go 3 rounds, and then box 7 would take over and ring 3 rounds. So you'd have got those, and then they would have rang the large bell on top of the fire hall to summon the volunteers from home.
Well, you'd have to get out of bed. Obviously it was at 2 in the morning, and then you'd have to race down to the fire hall, and at that time go in and put on your firefighting gear. They would
have long canvas jackets, and probably heavy leather boots, and you can imagine running down the street in that equipment. It would be quite a spectacle, and then the noise and the clatter of all the components bouncing up and down, and even in our short run it was making quite a lot of noise. And 100 years ago, firefighters didn't have self-contained breathing apparatus or anything to protect their respiratory tract from all the smoke and the heat. So by growing a long beard or something and mustache, what they would do is they would wet it down and put it in their mouths, and they'd actually breathe through that, and that would act as the filter.
Horses were in the fire hall. They would be just standing there, and the fire department horses themselves would move into the harnesses, which were hanging from the ceiling. And then the first guy in to drive the team would drop the harnesses onto the horse and away you'd go.
The horses would get quite eager and excited on fires because they were going to work as well. So they would move into position sometimes before even the firefighters were even there. They would be ready to go. Back 100 years ago, it was people trying to do their best, and training would have been probably more deploying just hose and getting hose to have water to spray on. Back in 100 years ago, the fire scene would probably be fairly chaotic and have lots of local do-gooders trying to help as well and doing things maybe that would have helped the fire spread.
What we really experienced yesterday wasn't near the weight of what the actual hose reel would have. We had no axes on it, no pole, no pry bars, no hose wrenches, no hydrant tools. We had none of the heavy equipment, adapters and all that they would have had in those days.
Which all would have been brass.
And
you know,
they would
heavy,
be brass,
heavy,
and that'd be
brass
heavy
and steel.
stuff. And it would add a lot of weight to that thing. And if you hit a little bit of a hill, there would be some real huffing and puffing.
If you didn't have a full complement of 6 guys show up at the hall to haul that wheel, and if there was only 3 of you, like in the middle of the night, like the Okanagan Hotel fire, who knows how many guys showed up. Now 3 of you or 4 of you got to get that wheel 6-8 blocks downtown with all that gear on, and if you had one guy fall, like you say, look out, you know.
Pulling the hose reel really gave you an idea of what firefighters were up against at that time, and the distance that you had to drag the thing to get to the other end of town, and how tired you'd be when you got there. What could you do when you got there?
You have a good appreciation for those guys way back when, and the jobs that they had to do, because by the time they got there, the buildings were usually totally involved, and they had their work cut out for them just to stop them from going further.
Anybody in that hallway is doomed.
I think he was sort of more than hero. I think unbelievable to go back into a building was on fire and then rescue a lady. Yeah.
Auntie Doll said that it was only 6 months that he cleared up his life. Now, whether he was just a good time person or whether he was a drunk, there were lots of drunks in those days.
Did Archie Hickling have any relatives or any friends?
That's never been mentioned because in those days a lot of people were on their own, definitely on their own.
Like in the heroic speech Mr. Husband delivered in his memory when they dedicated the memorial, an ordinary man you wouldn't even recognize on the street. It doesn't sound like a remittance man, does it?
Well, most of the remittance men were simply the second son. The first son in England got the business, the second one got the boot. She talked as if Hickling saved her, so I don't know. She certainly talked to me a lot about this Archie Hickling, because apparently he was almost a wild man, and then he kind of tamed down.
You get caught in a fire like that, the potential for a flashover is incredible, just incredible. The buildup of heat and gases up in the upper floors, and you're in that, and this is probably what happened to Mr. Hickling. He helped the person out, he was at the window, and he wasn't seen again. That's probably it. It was venting out that window.
Yeah.
And as soon as he helped an individual out the window, and he was standing there, and that thing probably vented right by him.
Yeah.
And that's a typical way we have a backdraft.
Yeah.
Typical.
Yeah.
We put it's hot, built up in that room. He introduces fresh air by the window. Bingo, bango. We got a big problem. And then we have a huge fire spread all of a sudden.
By allowing fresh air into an area that had lots of smoke and super hot gases in there, and maybe lacking oxygen, to just take it to that next step, and just allowing that in there, and the heat would then also try to escape out through the window, so it would be pulled to the window when he opened it. So even if it was at the door or in the hallway, it would be pulled to the window when he opened it up. So and if he was helping somebody out, he would have been between the person he's helping out and the fire, and it would be advancing very quickly to him.
Do you think the fire could have been an accident, Jimmy?
No.
Or
Auntie Doll, this is one thing Auntie Doll was 100% sure of, that it was lit, and she figures whoever lit it banged her brother on the head.
wow.
Because you got to remember, Julius was her full brother. That wasn't a part anything.
Well, I think it's pretty clear in there where they were pointing, and there's a couple of things that lead you to draw some conclusions, rightly or wrongly so, of a particular individual in there. I think his name might have been Smith.
$10,000 reward for his capture, including the BC government, as well as the Vernon City Council, and he was never found.
In fact, the law would have caught up with him. He would have probably been hanged for his crime, because he did kill people.
On his marriage certificate, back in 1908, Alex Smith said he was manager of Okanagan Hotel, and I thought he was just an employee, and it said in the paper, Alex Smith, a disgruntled employee, started the fire. So I guess something must have happened, and he wasn't happy. Yeah.
Arson is a very, very hard crime to prove. And if you go back 100 years to this fire, the investigation techniques were not anywhere close to what they are today. And it's tough even today. So if you think of back then, they went a lot on eyewitness account and he said, she said. And it's interesting reading in there about how Albers, the other owner with Mr. Siglet, he threatened at one time that he was going to burn the hotel down. So that right then and there, that could have got that guy, everybody looking at him then from somebody saying that. Or somebody could have said, maliciously, well, he did say that. And a lot of the courts on those days, were based on, people had the fear of God, so they were expected to tell the truth. And a lot of it was taken at their word. A lot of people probably were falsely accused, but it's just interesting to read how the one owner threatened that, and then he was buddies with Alex Smith, who was also implicated in this. So there could have been Alex Smith knowing that he was being fingered, but it was really the other guy, or vice versa. It's just interesting how that all played out.
This is the minute book from the Vernon Fire Department or Fire Brigade from 1909, and the minutes of the fire department meetings shortly after the Okanagan Hotel fire. And there's some interesting notes in here about the fire department resources and equipment. On page 21 here, at one of the meetings, there was was mentioned by the mayor and some public officials that the splendid work that the fire brigade did, and they were commending the fire department for their efforts on the Okanagan Hotel fire, on their work, and a vote of thanks was extended to the entire fire brigade for their work. It's interesting in the next meeting, and I think somewhere in here it relates to some other recommendations which are quite indicative of the time where you improve things as you go along.
Yeah, because they talk in here now about later on that they should put another hose reel down the other end of the town.
Which would mean that we wouldn't have to run quite so far, which would certainly make it a lot better for response and quick.
That building was constructed the way any other building would be of that time, and there's no special hazard that they're aware of. So I don't think anybody would be able to make a case out against Alberts and Siglet for a hotel that today would be a fire trap, but in those days would be contemporary boarding house style construction. I'm just trying to figure out if Alberts and Siglet had a hotel that was up to the normal construction standards of the day, or if it was better or worse, and speculate if there would be some responsibility for those families that survived the 11 dead people, some legal responsibility.
No, I think that's pretty far-fetched for 1909. I know you're a lawyer, but they were just around to make wills in those days.
There's a piece of legislation at the time, a Fire Protection Act or something it's called, that said anything over 3 stories had to have one fire escape, and also had to have a rope in each room affixed to the wall or someplace secure. You have to be pretty athletic to get out of a hotel room with a rope draped over the windowsill. I guess with a fire behind you, it's very quick. But
that required a metal outside fire escape that would support 6 people at one time, full-grown people, they added, and you had to maintain it, and had to end 8 feet from the ground above a sidewalk or something similar where people could escape and jump down to and land on. Now, those external escapes are no longer permitted, haven't been permitted for a long number of years, and you can't have just a railing on the side of a building.
Do you recall any talk about a man called Goodwin? He seemed to be recalled a number of times during the coroner's inquest for continued evidence that put some light on the so-called dispute between Albers and Siglet about trying to break up the hotel, and they turned at one point to Goodwin to actually get some help to end that partnership.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's always some negotiation process when a partnership breaks up, so
Yeah.
maybe people made too much of that and should have paid more attention to Julius
Well-
trying to kick Alex out of the bar that night and fussing over the 2 barrels that he brought around as a joke and got everyone kind of worked up.
I'd like to find out where Alex Smith ended up, and I've looked through BC vital statistics, death, registrations, but I think maybe he died in Alberta or somewhere, or over the border. Having recorded from the Vernon News, I saw Emily Smith living in Samanan in February 1910. She had a baby girl in Vernon Jubilee Hospital. It was even a birth announcement. I was horrified. Nobody from the hospital thought, maybe Alex Smith is going to pick up his wife up and new baby.
I did not ask you to come here this afternoon that I might refresh your memory as to the catastrophe which happened here some time ago. But we do not want you to forget the bravery shown by one man at the fire. Archie Hickling came from Nottingham, England, about 6 years ago. He was a young man and nothing unusual to look at, just such as you would find every day in the street, and you would pass him without notice. He was a working man, but he proved himself supreme in the hour of trial. I may say I have been in correspondence with his people who live at Brandon, Manitoba. They are not in extra good circumstances and could not afford to come here to see this monument. But I am sure when his mother knows that the people of Vernon have erected a monument to her boy, she will be a proud woman.
Gentlemen, it has been the custom to erect monuments to those who've done noble deeds in all ages. This was done not only as a fitting tribute to the dead, but as an inspiration to the living. We in this hustling country are immersed in business or industry, yet all the resources of Canada and all the energies of her people can never make her a great nation or give her a lasting name unless we keep before us high ideals of duty. Gentlemen, there's another reason why we should erect monuments to commemorate great deeds, and that is that it gives us faith in human nature. Looking back over the history of the world, we find such records of wrong and violence, of crime and oppression, that were it not also for the memories of great and noble deeds, we should almost despair of mankind. I can speak no fitting words in extolment of such a deed as this. Archie Hickling was a working man, what is often called a common man. Yet in that last half hour of his career, he did a deed which made his whole life sublime. Only a common man, yet in the supreme test of manhood, he did not fail. And if I were allowed to write his epitaph, I could find no nobler words than these. Greater love hath no man than that a man give his life for his friend. I say that not only we in Vernon, but the whole world is the richer for this deed of heroism. This monument may perish, the name of Archie Hickling may be forgotten, but the effect of what he did will never die. To you, Mr. Mayor, we commit the keeping of this monument, and to you, the people of Vernon, we commit his memory.
Mother didn't say much about Archie Hickling because she probably didn't even know him. Her Aunt Noel talked about him all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not kidding you, she always would bring up his name.
Wasn't Annie Dawes a teenager or something?
She was a teenager, yeah.
And
yeah.
Wasn't Archie
So
was
Archie,
21 or 22 or something?
Okay, yeah, so that's pretty close. Yeah.
Well, maybe Archie and Auntie Doll did have sweets for each other, because I do recall when I was very young asking, why Auntie Doll never got married. And somebody said that, well, her heart was broken because she was very fond of somebody, and that no name was mentioned.
But no, Auntie Doll told me that the reason she ended up not married and the reason she ended up having to work on that farm all her life, she said that the one she wanted to marry, and the only one that she ever wanted to marry, she couldn't marry because he wasn't a Lutheran and he wasn't about to be one. Maybe she was trying to straighten this guy out so Grandma would give the okay.
Who was this Archie Hickling? Why is his name chiseled in stone? Who was his family? Where did he come from? And why'd he call Vernon home? They said he was just a young worker. That's what the papers said. When the snow cleared from them burning embers, he was numbered with the dead. Greater love has no man than to lay down his life for his friends. That's what Archie Hickling did with a love that knew no end. What happened on that fateful evening, August 1909, and the sparks flew from the Hotel Okanagan, the flames lit up the sky. And why'd he run back to that flaming inferno? Did he hear young girls cry? The last words he said, run into that fire, I'll save you or I'll die. Greater love has no man than to lay down his life for his friends. That's what Archie Hickling did with a love that knew no end. 3 lives were saved that night. The hotel burned to the ground. A sacrifice that Archie made, you know, greater love can't be found. As I gaze on this granite cairn, his name is weathered with time. 100 years has faded, the memory of this pillar reminds that greater love has no man than to lay down his life for his friends. That's what Archie Hickling did with a love that knew no end. Greater love has no man than to lay down his life for his friends. That's what Archie Hickling did with a love that knew no end. With a love that knew no end. That kind of love that knows no end.